This is Karli, and this is my horse Petrie. You've seen us before. We've submitted 3 video submissions all about a year ago. Last year he pulled a check ligament last January, and then he had a couple abscesses crop up after that. So he's had almost a year off, and we've just been starting him back. We're not really trotting yet. You'll see just a touch of trotting at the end of this video. Just kind of wanted to check in and see how he was feeling. But mostly through this video you'll see walking. And hopefully once we've got him walking well enough, we're going to be able to start bringing him back from that injury. So today it was like a solid -30 outside. So I just brought him in and I'm starting him on the lunge line just to let him walk around and warm up and unthaw from being outside. So here we're starting in his easier direction. I find that works better for him, whether I'm starting lunging, work in hand, riding. It always seems a little easier to start in this direction for him. So here he starts out a little bit behind the leg, or behind the whip in this case, a little bit behind the leg, not quite as active as he could be. He starts out stretching at least with his neck out. He's not fully to the depth he normally gets, but as we go along here it'll get a little deeper. I like that he starts off with quite a free swinging walk. Like I said, not quite as active, but at least he's stepping out and through. And here we'll also see him kind of go through. He'll kind of want to jog away a little bit rather than actively step through, and he's a little bit fresh today, so I was a little bit tentative in asking him to step under with that inside hind to get a little bit more activity and throughness through his body. Today he would rather just give me a little bit of a jog away from that pressure rather than actually step up and through his back there. So I'm a little bit tentative in asking him, and I do keep him on a little bit smaller circle today because of that as well. So when we get to the riding, you'll kind of be able to see that he does step through a little bit more when I've got the reins in my body to kind of help influence that. So here he's starting to step a little bit more actively. He's not coming all the way through yet, but it's starting to look a little bit more open. There we get a little bit of hollowness and bend to the outside, and then he jogs when I ask him to step forward. So I just ask him to come back, soften, step under with the inside hind, and start to give me a little bit of bend to the inside with his body. There he looks a little bit inside and looks a little bit better for a moment. There, get a little bit more swing, still not all the way through, but starting to come a little better there. And there he kind of wanted to come in with his shoulder. He kind of has that tendency where he wants to come in with that right shoulder and look out to the left. Naturally he seems to bend a little easier that way. So here he softens a little bit and comes back a little bit slow, but I kind of let him go a little slower there as he was able to stretch down a little bit there for a moment. And there, that increased pressure got him to give me that little crappy little trot rather than to actively step through. There we got a couple more steps where he was taking that activity a little bit more forward, and there he stretches down better with his neck. That swing comes all the way through the body a little bit. And there he's starting to wander a little bit, but there's a little better, a little bit more swing through his body. And he comes up and down a little bit through here as well. I think ideally I would have pushed him, watching this back, I think I would have pushed him onto a bigger circle now to just get him away from leaning on me and take up a little bit more slack in that lunge line. And hopefully get him to step a little bit more actively without pushing him too hard where he goes into that little kind of weak little trot that he gives me. But because I know we had a lot planned for today, we just kind of, he stretched out actively enough that we're just going to switch sides. Get a little organized here for a minute with all the winter gloves and the winter clothes. It's still quite cold in our arena at this time of year. As I'm sure you can tell with the woolly horse, but so still getting organized. There. So starting off pretty behind the motion on this side too, a little bit behind. Stretch isn't too bad. I remember thinking the stretch wasn't too bad there, that I would just kind of let him be a little bit slow to see if I could keep the stretch without getting that trot, if I just kind of really worked at it a little slow there for a moment. So that's kind of what I'm letting him do here. Just giving him a moment to see if we can keep that stretch and get a little bit more activity slowly without getting a really weak trot on this side. So here's not too bad. The hind feet are tracking up fairly well. He's still got that big belly, and he's still looking a little bit to the outside. I haven't got much bend yet through the body. And he's not quite all the way down as far as I'd like to see him. And here we're just kind of oscillating between outside bend, inside bend. He's kind of coming through. There, looks a little bit better swing for a very short moment. There's looking a little better. There. Still looking a little bit tight and a little bit just above where I'd like to see him come through for an optimal swing for him. There's looking a little bit better, a little bit more forward. Ideally, I'd still like to see him a little bit more forward, but there at least we're starting to get that inside hind to push him with a little bit more bend. And there he comes up again, looks to the outside. And I can kind of see me using the whip of there a little bit to get his attention and see if I can get that inside hind tracking up under the belly. There I ask, and you can kind of see it went up into a hollow posture, and he was going to give me that trot, so I softened immediately and brought him back a little bit slower to ask again. There he came through a little bit more there. That's looking a little bit better. And there's just more of the same, just kind of playing with that teeter-totter of being able to ask him for a little bit more activity without him giving me that really crappy little trot that he likes to do there. And here I think probably in watching this, I would have asked for a little bit more bend to the inside with a little bit firmer, just a little touch more contact, just to kind of give me a little bit more leeway with the inside bend. And then being able to access the inside hind that way as well. There, was looking a little better for a moment. I mean, not altogether too disappointed with the amount he's going here, just from being outside in the cold weather and not really working too much over the last year, just some work, mostly working and hand walking for the last little bit while he's been recovering. So we'll just end on that right now because we're going to go to the work in hand. And there's me peeking underneath, checking that we're ready to go. So here again, I start on his easier side. And I remember feeling like he was super behind the leg and just kind of lagging behind me off to start off here. So that's all I'm doing. The first little half circle or circle here is just getting him stepping up and forward, which totally makes sense because I wasn't really able to ask and follow through on asking for that forward on the lunge line because of that little trot he was giving me. And because he's not ready to trot, I didn't want to push that. So we just kind of came back to a little bit slower walk. So that really left us with a horse that's going to be behind the leg when you start the work in hand. So I think it was really good here that I was able to do the work in hand before getting on, get him a little bit forward, get him a little bit more active and stepping through. So here, that looks better already. That first circle, get him ahead of the leg, and now he's kind of stepping up and forward. He felt like he was coming through the shoulder there. And there we got a little bit more bend. I like that way better. And there I remember thinking I wasn't watching exactly where I was going, so I lost the outside shoulder. He kind of got a little crooked on me there, but reestablish the forward, figure out where I'm going here again, and there he looks behind the leg again. So ideally I would have asked him for a little bit more forward, a little bit quicker there. It did come, and he did come through a little bit better, but I think I kind of missed the first couple steps. Here he's starting to come a little bit, got really slow and stuck in that corner. But I remember I kind of felt like he was going to cough and sneeze there, and he did end up licking and chewing, so I remember waiting on him there a little bit. There, looks better. That's starting to swing way more. Starting to come out a little bit longer. That neck looks longer. Looks a little bit more relaxed on the underside of the neck. A little bit more openness in the throat latch. Not a ton yet going on in the abdominal or belly kind of back region there. It still looks like it's hanging and swinging pretty low, but he's starting to kind of open up through the neck and the shoulder and the back. There, we're getting a lot more bend. I asked for a slight little bit of leg yield to the outside rein, and he came through quite well. As we came to the corner, I kind of lost his shoulder to the outside. Again, I think I was probably turning too quickly and making that corner more of a square corner than a rounded corner for his level of engagement here. There's coming quite nicely. That looks quite good. To kind of further add on to that, I'd ask for a little bit more activity to get him to come through his whole back and push up there, but that was looking quite good for a moment. There I look like I got a little bit too far ahead of him and kind of stifled his forward motion. But it actually ended up okay for me as I came through the corner there. He came stretched down quite well. There, I think I got a little bit tied up in too much lateral motion and kind of got sucked back on the reins a little bit too, holding too much with my hand. And he got a little sucked back behind the bridle there instead of forward. And then I think that was the result of doing that. He kind of got sucked back behind, and then I really had to get him forward in that side. So I think I created that one. Here, this looks more forward. Could come down a little bit further. It's starting to look a little bit more consistent though in the work in hand. There, just coming to a quiet halt so we can switch sides. We haven't done much yet, but it is kind of starting to look like he's a little bit more engaged through his belly. It's not quite looking like it's quite so distended. He has quite a tendency to gain weight super easily, especially when he's not in work, and his rib cage is already quite wide, so he just looks so thick through there when he's not in work. So here it's not starting off too bad. Again, have to ask for or enforce the forward a little bit, starting on this side again. There he came through for a moment and then comes back up and hollows. And really on him, I really notice it on his right hind, especially going this way. When he's not all the way through his back, you can really see that leg stumble. And there he stumbled left hind, but he looks quite stiff in the hocks to me when he goes this direction and is not all the way through his body. Here, getting a little bit more forward, really asking for some lateral movement because he does feel quite stiff to me at this point. And there, he kind of comes out of it, doesn't quite go all the way down or all the way through yet, but a little bit of improvement there. Here, we're just kind of stiff, kind of hollow. He's kind of sucking back. He kind of wanted to suck to the gate there. There's a little bit better. I think the support of the outside wall helped me get him through a little bit there. There's better for a moment. There's looking finally like we're kind of going the right direction there. You can really see on him and his throat latch, it really starts to get more range of motion and more openness when he finally kind of comes through all the way. That's where I really notice it on him. In addition to the back the back end coming through, but on the neck, that's where I notice it most. He really opens that throat latch and that the pole starts to swing almost in conjunction with the rib cage in the hind end. There's looking a little bit better. There, I like that motion better. And here again, I seem to be doing the same thing. We're making that corner. I think I didn't quite have my eyes up around him, over him enough there. I kind of make that first corner more of a square, and I think that is hindering my ability to keep him over his back. I would much rather see a shallower circle kind of corner there to kind of help him stay through. There's looking not too bad. Kind of stiffened to the outside a little bit there. I think I was doing a little bit of leg yield to the outside and didn't have enough support on that outside rein, it was kind of looking like. There's not enough ahead of the leg. You can see I'm asking him forward. There, kind of comes through for me. There we go. It's looking a little better. Not all the way active or not quite all the way through, but especially for this side as well, he is starting to step a little bit more than the lunging. There. It's looking a little better. There. Still not all the way down or all the way through, but definitely more freedom than we started off with, and way more activity than we started off with in the lunging as well. So I think that is all I do for the work in hand. Yeah. So I think we'll take a little short break and I tack up and then I sit on him. So here, I think we do probably about 10 or 15 minutes of walk here today. And you can see already, as soon as I get on him, I'm able to get way more stretch and way more activity. So I do like to do the work in hand. I don't do a ton of lunging because I feel like I don't get as far through his body with the lunging, and because he is better in when I'm sitting on him. I find that is the most effective place for me to be most days. I do like to warm him up in the work in hand, but once I feel like we've got enough through there, I do find it more effective for me to be able to sit on him. And that may be him, or it may be because I've had more experience riding than starting the work in hand. So that could definitely be a factor in that. But I like this swing much better. He still looks to me very dropped through the belly, and you can see that dip behind the saddle, and I kind of feel like I'm sitting in a hole a bit still. But the stretch is more full through here. The swing is better. I'm able to get a little bit more bend. And this looks like something that I can kind of take and develop into something a little bit more. So this, I'm much happier with this. He's kind of playing with the contact a little bit there, and I'm just kind of letting him be for a moment. Whatever he kind of needs to do as we get warm through, as he warms up through his body. So there, I like that correction. When he did come up and hollow, I was able to engage that inside hind to push up through the belly, and it came up really quite well. So I like that correction. Here, I think I'm a little bit loose in the contact in my reins. I could have a touch more feel just to the weight of the rein there, but not too bad. Here he looks he's still stretching deeply, but he looks really quite on the forehand through that corner. So I think that may just come in time as well as he's stronger. This is probably only his 4th or 5th ride, I think, that I've sat on him since his almost year off. So he really remembered the stretch well from when we'd started it last year around this time. So here, when we came across the diagonal, he did quite well until we got into the corner and really had to switch the bend. He came up for a moment, and then it looks really quite nice through this corner. I think for his level of strength and the amount that his belly and back is down, I quite like this amount of swing on him. There, we kind of lost it a bit. I'd asked for a little bit more push, and he went up into a trot instead. I think that was probably just a little bit hard for him there. Here, really good swing, stepping through forward. There we come up a touch again, but he comes right back down to it. Here we'll do a little bit of a leg yield from the quarter line to the long side. There he just kind of fell onto the forehand and onto the shoulder, pushed the shoulder over and forgot about the hind end. I straightened him out for a moment and asked again. I felt like I was going to get a couple steps, but he pushed into a trot rather than to step actively up under his body. Which is fine for one of our first leg yields, but it definitely wasn't up and through his body as much as I would have liked to see. But he does a nice corner and comes back from it well. So here we'll go quarter line again, push over to the wall. There we didn't get much, and I shortened my rein to get a little bit more contact to get him over. And he stepped over okay for a moment, and again pushed into that little weak little trot instead of coming up all the way through the body. But comes back to the nice stretch and around the corner. So that's fine for a moment. There, came up and braced a little bit and came right back down. So I just tried, I think, the leg yield twice and then maybe once on the other side, but left it at that. He seems a little bit not quite strong enough for them yet. Just that little bit of increased activity from a leg yield and crossing up under the body was enough to make him decide that he would rather trot than give me that extra engagement, which is fine. We'll just revisit that another day. They're up in braces and wants to do that little trot thing again, but really responsive to come back into that long stretch. And up across the diagonal. Lose the stretch a little bit across the diagonal line here. Gain it back as we come into the corner and get a little bit more bend, but definitely I'm able to see that without the support of the wall or the support of staying on a circle or a corner, it's definitely harder for him to stay over and through his back and engaged on the straight lines, which is the way it comes, but you can definitely see it across the diagonal there. There, that's a nice stretch. I can kind of see where I pushed him from that inside hind into my outside rein contact. I really like that. And you can kind of see just a touch of leg yield. I kept it really tiny on this side, but he did that really quite well. Comes up a bit there, a little bracy. And you can see those hocks get a little stabby. And his neck comes up and kind of gets ugly there for a moment. And would rather trot than come all the way back down. So I'm just asking with that inside leg, inside hind, to fill up that outside rein contact. And there he comes through again. There, and we've got the swing and the lumbar moving and the hips side to side. Becomes way nicer. There. Little bit more shoulder in kind of feel on this side. Just kind of wanted to play with that and see what it felt like. Not too bad at all. He did come up and brace a bit, but didn't try and go into a trot or anything. So I was quite happy with that. There, we're up and down a little bit again, not quite all the way through, but remaining fairly active. There's a little better for a moment. There we go. There. I found that diagonal to be a little bit better and a little less hollow than the other side. There, he kind of braces again. I was just going to say he was like leaning a little bit on me on the inside shoulder there. And then when I corrected, he came into a trot rather than step all the way through. But he's stepping through now, so that looks a lot better. There. That looks more optimal swing. You can kind of see a little bit more freedom as that hind end is able to swing up a little bit more through there. There. Yeah, there we go. And there's a little bit better feel even yet. When he does get that extra bit of depth there, sometimes I do lose the swing a little bit. I kind of play with allowing him to slow down just a touch as he stretches out all that way, just to kind of play with just kind of I guess allow him to say that that is the right answer, rather than really kicking him on or asking him to go forward when he does stretch all the way down, if that makes sense. There's looking pretty good. I mean, you can still see his back isn't coming all the way up and he still looks a little bit pregnant, but it's definitely looking better than where we started. There, he really starts to play with going a little bit deep all the way. And a little bit bracy, but he's just kind of playing with going all the way up and down. And There's quite good as well. And again, you can kind of see him just stretching his nose out those last little couple 2 inches to the ground and coming back up the 2 inches and then all the way down and then back up a little bit. So I remember just kind of letting him work it out by himself and play with it. And he's just, if the video sound was on, he was kind of snorting and blowing and licking and chewing and doing all sorts of things. So I was just kind of letting him play with that, and you can see him chewing on the bit a little bit too. So I think he was releasing some extra tension he had going on there. So I just let him kind of play with that around the arena for a minute or two. Yeah, he's still playing with it, and I just kind of let him sneeze and cough and stretch out, and he kind of pokes his tongue out on the one side too. So I think he just had some stored tension that this work helped him release, and he was just kind of letting that go through his body. So I just let him feel it and give him a moment. And the swing is definitely way more active now. This is looking a little bit more free through the whole body. Not super consistent on the contact, but definitely looking like it's going in the right direction. And I think he's still sneezing a bit through here. Yeah, he was still licking and chewing and playing with his tongue. So I was just kind of waiting on him. Yeah, you can see him chewing. And so because he had felt quite good today, I figured the vet had said give him a little bit longer before we do too much with him, but he was feeling quite good. So I think we go into a little bit of a trot, which he turns into a canter, but the lovely creature that he is, he doesn't do anything too extreme. He just kind of goes into a canter and then turns it into a beautiful stretch trot. So I was totally fine with that. Definitely he looks on the forehand, and he looks a little not quite his optimal, just due to fitness, I think. But for the first trot in like a year, I was not displeased with that, seeing that and having him come through so deeply. He definitely got behind the bit on that second half of the circle, which is why I just kind of stopped him rather than fight with him. I would have liked the nose to be out in front of him rather than kind of sitting behind the vertical there, but he was a little bit fresh. So here, and he comes back to like a really quite nice trot. It's fully stretched out, not quite as active as I had before we picked up the trot there. Got a little bit sucked back and a little bit still kind of just figuring out his mouth and contact and what he was doing there, but I'm not unhappy with that at all. And then I think we do a little half circle this way for a moment. Yeah, go to pick up the trot and he kind of canters away, but little fresh creature right now. So there, not too bad, comes down through the nice stretch trot, stepping through quite nicely. His legs look quite in unison, and here he starts to kind of really lean on me and kind of want to run away with me, so, and gets way behind the bridle and starts to curl over. So I just kind of use my outside rein and bring him back and say, okay, you feel pretty good today, but that's enough for today. But really, for the first trot in a year, for him to come through and stretch for that, I was quite happy with it. So after we took off the saddle, I thought we could show just a little bit of him standing. So here you can see there's not a whole lot of neck development. At least there's not a huge underside developed. He used to have quite overdevelopment over C1 and C2 on the dorsal aspect, and then quite bulged through the ventral base of the neck there, but looking much more even and much more neutral, although not with a lot of muscular development. You can see he does have a big distended abdomen and belly. That's kind of like his major thing that you see with him. Little bit, I think I'll kind of run my hand. It's a little hard to see with the gray or the white hair, but a little bit dip behind the wither there. There's quite a large pocket for the saddle. And then just the curvature from the wither and between the wither and the sacrum is quite like a little bit of a boat. You're sitting on quite a bit of a hole. Not a ton of gluteal tissue over his rump there, but I mean, to be expected with a year off, I suppose. And you can kind of get a little bit more full picture on this side.